honor and respects, luz y progreso. This is your host, Sancista Brujo Luis. I'm doing a video today because many of my YouTube followers have requested if I can do more videos on personal stories of situations that I've been through in my spiritual life, in my spiritual journey. Many of them are very private, so I'm very careful what I share on my channel. You know, you want to share, but you want to keep a lot of your personal life personal, of course. So I thought of 3 stories that I would like to share, and I have my cell phone with me because I'm going to time myself during this video. I'm going to time myself because I know I tend to ramble a lot in my videos, and I really apologize for that. So I'm going to tell you maybe 3 or 4 stories today. I'm not sure. I'm going to time them for at least 4 minutes each story. I want to get the point out and the message and go for there. So this is to all my followers who've asked and who've requested that I do videos of personal stories, and I hope you enjoy.
Sea el Santísimo, sea el Santísimo, sea Madre mía de la caridad, ayúdanos, ampáranos, en el nombre de Dios, ay Dios.
Okay, so I have my timer here, and just because I'm going to time myself at least to 4, when I get to the 4 point, it's time for me to start ending the story. The first one that I'm going to talk about is, I'm going to title it La Sesión. La Sesión in Spanish means the seance. So I'm going to start this timer. And a few years ago, I was invited to a sesión. A sesión in Spanish means a session or a seance, okay? I was invited to a seance in a house of a local santero here in my hometown. They had moved in, they had purchased a new home, they had moved in, the santero and his wife. He was Cuban and she was Puerto Rican, and they had moved into a home, brand new home. It was a Victorian home. The house dated back from the 1800s. So they had purchased this house. Shortly upon moving in, the wife started noticing things were being moved around. The wife was having nightmares. She couldn't sleep. She was feeling depressed, anxiety. And this had only started, it started the moment that they had moved into this house. So they had invited me to perform a sesión. Like I said, a seance within their home. So I had gone. It was me, the gentleman, his wife, and 4 other mediums that I had never met before. So we were sitting around the table, okay? He had a dining room table, a little oblong table. It was 8 chairs, but there were 7 of us, so he removed one of the chairs. Now I remember that the house had a fireplace, and on top of the fireplace, there were those old dishes that they used to wear, you know, they used to use a long time ago. It was like more for decoration than for eating. They were collectible. They were his wife's. So we were performing the prayers. We were performing the prayers to start La Sesión, and we were cleansing, we were passing the agua florida. And all of a sudden, we heard, you know, noises. Now, this is an old house, so you would expect that. It's an old house. It could happen. Ignore it. And we just kept doing the prayers. We kept passing the Florida water and cleansing. When all of a sudden, one of the plates from the fireplace literally fell off the mantle of the fireplace. Everyone got shook up. I stopped everyone. I said, relax, do not break the circle, because once we start a session or a seance, we must stay within that circle. We cannot break that circle. So we kept going. We kept doing the prayers, and all of a sudden, no word of a lie, another plate fell off the mantle of the fireplace, which shook 2 of the other mediums that I hadn't met. There was 2 women and 2 men. Shook the 2 women. Then they got up. They literally got up and they wanted out. And I'm like, wait, you cannot break the circle. You cannot break the circle. This is very dangerous, not just for us, but for also the people who's hosting the session. They wanted nothing to do with the session, to the point where the ladies got up and left. And for us, when we do a sesión espiritual, you do not, no matter what you see or feel or hear, when you are sitting around that table, you cannot break that circle. It's so important. The ladies went out, their husbands followed, or the gentlemen, I don't remember if they were husbands, they followed them outside. I was very disgruntled. To the point where they didn't want to come back into the house. They were like, no, the house is full of demons, the house is full of lower level spirits. And I was confused because in my mind, I'm like, aren't we espiritistas? This is what we do. You know what I'm saying? We do sesiones. We do work la causa. Causa, I'll talk about that in a future video. They didn't want to come back into the house. They were like, no, the house is possessed. There's demons. We don't want nothing to do with it. They left. Literally, they left. So sadly to say, and I'm not going to go too deep into the story, but I'm not going to go further than that, but they left, and I said to the husband of, the santero, I said, okay, it's going to be you, me, and your wife. We are going to do the sesión. There's a reason why they needed to leave. We're going to continue la sesión, okay, just us 3. We're going to start from the beginning. We're going to cleanse. We're going to open up this circle. Este círculo de protección, as we call it in Spanish, circle of protection. Whatever happens, we cannot break this circle. At the end of la sesión, we got messages. A spirit came down. I don't want to go too deep into it, but we found out what was the causa. The causa was the cause of the problems within the house, and we took care of it. So the moral of that story is that when you do perform a sesión or a seance, once that circle and the mediums are sitting down, you cannot break that circle. It is so important that that circle does not break. It's not just only dangerous for the mediums, but for all who participate. It's very dangerous. So I timed myself, and remember, when you do perform a sesión or a seance or velada or a misa espiritual, they are all 3 different things. When the mediums are sitting around that table and they have the círculo de protección and they have the prayers and the oraciones, whatever happens, these mediums have to be professional enough that they cannot move. They are media unidades. There's a reason why we are media unidades, and I'm not going to sit here and disrespect these other 4 mediums that got up, but to me, I realize in Puerto Rico, we call them, son charlatanes. Those are charlatans, because a professional medium would not do that. No matter what happens around the circle, outside of the circle, whatever appears, whatever you hear, you cannot break that circle. So I just wanted to say that story. And I'm going to title. So the next story that I want to talk about, I'm going to title it La Hora Santa, or the Holy Hour. Before I do explain the story, I want to explain one of the individuals that had come with me, or I went with her. The person I'm going to talk about, I call her Mama Chabela. Mama Chabela is my neighbor. She comes from a long line of family who are espiritistas in Puerto Rico. They do own a templo espiritual, a spiritual temple center in Puerto Rico, in Guaynabo. Mama Chabela is in her 60s. I am the godfather of her grandson, who is an espiritista, but he's also a brujo, similar to me. He's got both los rangos, as we say in Puerto Rico. Tiene the spiritual and the magical, similar to what I am. Mama Chabela started desarrollando in Puerto Rico, and spiritism means to develop your spiritual gifts. She started developing her spiritual gifts at 13 years old. And I don't want to go too far in it, but it happened to her when she was in school. She was 12, 13 years old, where all of a sudden spirits were jumping on her. And there was, from what she says, it happened that she just started jumping. She jumped out of her desk, was throwing herself on the floor. Her parents had to come to pick her up. It was like a mental illness. So they had brought her to the templo of her family, and they worked the spirit, and then she started developing her spiritual gifts. Today, Mama Chavela still works her spiritual gifts, but she is a devout Catholic. She is a person that does las novenas for when people die. Okay, in the Puerto Rican culture, when someone dies, when someone passes away from this world to the next, in the Puerto Rican culture, we do la velada for 3 days. We watch the person for 3 days. Then we take a day of rest. Then we bury that person, or we bury that person after the 3 days. Sorry, we watch the person for 3 days. We bury them on the third day. Then we take a day of rest. And then after that, we do what we call in Puerto Rico, las novenas, okay? Where someone comes, there's an altar or a table with flowers and the picture of the person who passed away. And we do a prayer for an hour, for 9 days. After that, everyone, after that's finished, everyone's fed, a sancocho, which is a Puerto Rican stew. And there's bread, there's rice, and, just after that. And then people can hang around and conversate and whatever. We do this because this is a way for helping the spirit to find light. And so we do that for 9 days after the person passes away. And it's part of the Puerto Rican culture, not just the Puerto Rican culture, but it's also part of all Hispanic cultures. And this is something that in Espiritismo we borrowed from the Catholic tradition. So after the 1 year of the mark of the persons that died, we do another, which is the anniversary of the death of the person. We do an hora santa or a velada where we pray for the anniversary of that spirit. Again, another altar is constructed. The person comes, someone does the prayers, because now the spirit is starting to elevate. It recognizes that has passed away, and it goes deeper than that. So anyways, Mama Chavela, and I'm going to start placing my timer in a second, but Mama Chavela had invited me to one of these where this gentleman had passed away a year earlier. She had performed the novenas for this person. So we, starting this timer, we went to the house. I remember we had gone to the house. It was a bunch of women and a couple of gentlemen, and Chavela had started her prayers. She stood in front of the altar with a picture of the gentleman. He had passed away a year. It's been a year since he had passed away, and she started to do the prayers. Now, when we do this, we do not invoke the dead. We do not call on the dead. All we're doing is praying to that soul, to keep guiding it, to keep elevating, to keep finding that light. It's a year, and now the spirit can communicate. It will start communicating. I'm going a little deeper. So as Mama Chavela was doing the prayers, there was one person, one of the women who was there, she started shaking. And you can see that it seemed like she was going to get mounted by a spirit. When we do this hora santa or this velada, we're not here to get mounted. This is not a sesión. This is not a velada. This is not a misa. This is to pray for that dead person who has passed away so that they can keep finding the light. As Chavela was praying, this woman kept convulsing. And I was watching this woman, and Chavela kept praying the rosary, okay, because we do a rosario during this time. And all of a sudden, the woman physically got mounted, and it was a lower level entity, and it stopped Chavela as Chavela was doing the rosary. She was on the third or fourth mystery at this time, and the spirit stopped Mama Chavela and said, "Why are you praying? I don't want you to pray. I don't want you." It was very angry that Mama Chavela was praying, which Mama Chavela to me is like a mother figure. I have a lot of respect for her. I have a lot of respect for her family. And I'm a very protective person of those people that I view as family. And I remember Chavela took a few steps back. She held her rosary like to her chest, and she took a few steps back, and rage literally just took over my body. And I looked at the person who had mounted this lower level entity, and was upset that Mama Chabela was praying, that I took some holy water and I sprinkled it on the feet of the person who was mounted. And I said, you are a lower level entity. You do not belong here. This is not what we are here for. You are un espíritu burlón. And I'll write the word burlón in the bottom. Tú eres un espíritu burlón, un espíritu atrasado. Usted no pertenece en la materia. Usted no pertenece en el mundo de los vivos. Vaya, busca de la luz. Go to the light. You don't belong here. When I said this, and I said this in a very stern voice, the woman who had got mounted, she got her composure back. And you can see she was a little disgruntled at this. I was more disgruntled. Mama Chabela was shooken up by this. And I said, Chabela, just finish the prayers. And she did. After we finished the prayers, Chabela just wanted to leave. The host of the party, who was the daughter of the man who had passed away, who was hosting the Hora Santa, she was very embarrassed and she kept apologizing, and Mama Chabela wanted to leave. I said, Chabela, it's okay, we will leave. We told the lady, it's not your fault, these things do happen, but we did leave. As we were going home, I said, Mama Chabela, please pass by a bridge where there's water, because we need to cut los corriente, we need to cut los fluidos, we need to cut the current, the spiritual current, the spiritual fluids from that Hora Santa. 1, 2, after that, we need to go to a cemetery. By the gate of the cemetery, we were going to park in front of the cemetery. I had an agua florida, I had some change in my pocket. She had some change in her purse and in the glove compartment of our car. We took some change and we started cleansing in front of the entrance of the cemetery. Whatever spirit may have followed us, whatever espíritu bulón, aquí te queda, you stay here. You do not belong in the world of the living. We cleansed ourselves, okay? And we ended that. And we just went home, and of course she cleansed and I cleansed when I got home. When we do, like I said, when someone passes away when someone passes away, for us Latinos, we watch the person for 3 days, and then we bury them. Then we take a day of rest. Then after the day of rest, okay, then we do las novenas, el rosario, which is someone comes and prays the rosary for 9 days, trying to guide that spirit into a light so that that spirit does not become earthbound. After the 1 year, again, we do an anniversary because of the person who had made the crossing into the world of the dead. We do another oración, another Hora Santa, where someone prays the rosario, and no one is supposed to mount. This woman decided to mounted one of her lower level spirits, which upset not just me, it shook Mama Chabela, and it really, the host of this Hora Santa was very embarrassed, and she kept apologizing. Mama Chabela kept doing her prayers. After this, after the woman who had mounted, she had calmed down. Mama Chabela continued her prayers, and we just left. We didn't have bread. We didn't break bread with the people. We passed that bridge. We went to the cemetery. No despojamos with Florida water. We cleansed ourselves with Florida water. We had some change. We dropped it in the front of the cemetery. Whatever may have followed us, or if anything may have followed us, it stays there. It cannot follow us home. So that's another story that I just wanted to add. So the next story that I'm going to talk about or tell you, I'm titling it Evidencias or Videncias. Evidencias in espiritismo, or videncias, the way we say in Puerto Rico, is when a medium receives messages that it needs to give to the family. And only that spirit and the family would know this information. The medium cannot know this information, so the medium is receiving the message from the spirit to relay to the family. Now, this also involves Mama Chabela. We had gone to do a novena, a rosario, for a woman, a young woman. She was in her 30s, who had passed away. Mama Chabela is in my hometown. She is one of the few Puerto Rican women who is both Catholic and she is espiritista, who still does los rosarios, which is sadly to say a tradition that is dying out within the United States. You know, in Puerto Rico it is still done, and in Latin America it is still done, but in the United States it is something that is kind of dying out. So Mama Chabela is always doing rosarios for people who have passed away. So we had gone to this novena, this rosario. Again, like I said in my previous story, when someone passes away, we watch them for 3 days, we take a day of rest, and then, so as I was stating, I'm sorry about that, we do the rosarios for 9 days. Now, on the last rosario of this person that we were doing, that Mama Chabela was doing, during one of the mysteries, I don't remember if it was the second or third mystery, I think it was around the third mystery of a rosario, Mama Chabela started to cry. And she was trying so hard to get through this rosario, but tears were coming down her face, which of course made the family that was there begin to cry. And I'm there with Mama Chabela. When I go to rosarios, I always sit on the left-hand side of Mama Chabela as she does the rosarios. So she began to cry and she said, I have to stop at rosario for one moment. She was getting a message from the world of spirit. Now, mind you, Mama Chabela is one of the few in our town, and I am learning how to do the misterios, el rosario, so that I can continue this tradition, you know, when Mama Chabela cannot do it no longer. And I do know el rosario. But anyways, she had to stop and she said, I have a message. I have to stop the rosario because this message is, the more I'm praying el misterio or la Dios te salve Maria, or whatever it was that she was saying, I can't focus because there's a message that I need to relay to you, the family of this lady who had passed away. Mind you, we did not know this woman, okay? So Mama Chabela began to cry, and she began to cry that sob, that, you know, when you sob and you can't breathe, you know, that, which made the family begin to cry, because it reminded them of the way the woman cried, okay, the one that had passed away. And Mama Chabela said, I have a message for you. She's whispering in my ear, and she's telling me to tell you that the reason she passed away, and I don't want to go too deep into her illness, is very private, and I want to keep it private for the family and everyone involved, but the reason she passed away is because her boyfriend or her lover, her live-in lover, was taking her medication and selling them on the streets so that this man can support a habit. Sadly to say, this medication, these pills could have prolonged this woman's life. She was very weak. She loved this man, and for whatever reasons, she allowed him to sell her medication. Sadly to say, her life was cut short. So the spirit was relaying messages to Mama Chabela to say, the reason why I have passed on is because I did this. It was my fault. It is not that man's fault. It's my fault because I allowed it. I forgive him. It is in the hands of God. I love you. May you all find peace. Which, of course, made the family more hysterical, you know, more sad than what it was. Now, and I don't want to go too deep into that. It was a touching story, but as a medium, as a media unidad, and I'm going to break down the word media unidad. As a medium can get messages from the world of spirit that only that person and that spirit would know. The medium could not know. And Chabela, being one of the few women who does the rosarios here in my hometown, she did not know these people, and she's always getting contacted to do the rosarios. She didn't know this woman. She was asked to do the rosarios. We went, and she didn't know about, of course, the pills and all that. And but the spirit was saying, you have to relay this message. Let my family know that I am okay. that I forgive this man. It is in the hands of God. I'm at peace and I will go into the light. Okay, I want you all to be in peace. You guys are all angry because this, maybe someone knew that this man was doing that. You could have done something, you could have intervened, but I'm at peace and it is in the hands of God. And so I just wanted to relay that story, that when you are a medium, una mediunidad, many times you will get vivencias or evidencias, where you will get messages that only the spirit and that person will know. And we canalizamos that message between the person and the spirit. The next story that I'm going to talk to you about is a very personal story, but I need to talk about it. And today is the 10th anniversary of the passing of my father. His nickname was Eddie. In the neighborhood, they used to call him Azuquita. I don't know if you can see that. This is my dad. This is my father. Beautiful Taino man. Love you, puppy. So I'm going to title this video La Noche Oscura del Alma, the dark night of the soul. And there's a reason why I'm talking about this. It's very personal, but so you can understand Sancista Brujo Luis a little bit better. A medium, una mediunidad espiritista, we go through desarrollos in different stages of our lives. And there are times when we go through the darkest part of our soul. And it usually happens when we start developing as a young, like a woman starts developing her, or a man starts, a boy becomes a man. That's one stage. And then it happens in our 20s. It can happen around our mid-30s. I went through a dark night of the soul, or Noche Oscura del Alma, when I was 28 years old. I had lost faith in God. I had lost faith in all my spirits. I remember that I got rid of everything that was spiritual, everything that was religious in my life. I wanted nothing. All the statues, everything went into the garbage. There was a couple of statues I couldn't get rid of. They just went into a closet, but everything. And I had gone through this dark night of soul where I just wanted to be a normal human being. I didn't want this gift no more. A lot of people call it a gift. This don, this facultad, this faculty. I didn't want it no more. I just wanted to be a normal person. And during this normal stage of my life, which it was a dark night of soul, I went, very personal, I went through the darkest stage of my life. I lost myself completely, where I was in my 20s, late 20s. I had started experimenting with drugs where I had never experimented with drugs till then. I became an alcoholic during that stage of my life. And I was sexually promiscuous. I'd sleep around with anything. I was very lost. I had lost my faith. I had lost my spirituality. And so I was in this deep, deep darkness, very depressed. I could not look into the mirror and say that I loved myself or I cared for myself. I couldn't do that. So I remember one day, at the time, this was in my 20s, at the time I was living in a building. I lived on the 3rd floor, and in order to get to my apartment, you had to go through this elevator. And in the elevator, it was like, the best way I can say is like a steel, like you can see a reflection, on the door of the elevator. So I remembered that when I looked at my reflection on that steel door, my face transformed into a skull. I remember seeing a skull, like literally I saw a skull looking back at me, which kind of startled me, and I took a couple steps back, got home, lit up a cigarette, I made myself a rum and coke, chilled. That night, and I had been going through this dark night or so for 3 years. I had completely lost myself, and there's a reason why my father is part of this story. I had gone to sleep. I remembered I had gone to sleep. And in my dream, I remember that it was me and my father. Me and my father were not very close during my life. There would be times where I would not see my father for years. And then sometimes I'd see him on the street and I'd say, "Hi, Pa." And that was it. That was our relationship. But it was not, we were never really close. Not that my father was a bad man. He was not a bad man. He was just not a loving man, which when I was little, I needed the love. Back to my story. I remember that I had fallen asleep, and I can never forget this dream for my whole life. It's still vivid in my mind because it was so surreal. I had gone to sleep, and in this dream, I was in Puerto Rico, going to my hometown, and my father was driving the car. Now, where we live in Puerto Rico, you have to go up this high hill, winding roads, and then you can see the ravine down, and if you crash, you're done. So I remember in the dream, my father was driving, and I was in the passenger seat, and my father was yelling at me. He was upset with me. He was not happy with me. He was this and this and that, and all of a sudden, his face started changing. It was very demonical. It seemed like a demon, like he was getting possessed by a demon. And then he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to end your life right now." And in the dream, I remember saying, "Papi, it's me, Luis. Soy tu hijo. I'm your son." And he stopped the car. I remember the dream. He stopped the car. It was raining. And he stopped the car. It was downpouring and it was gray in the dream. And he stopped the car and he pulled out a knife. That gave me in the dream enough time to jump out of the car. And I remember jumping out of the car and running, and I heard him in the back, and I looked back, and the knife had turned into a machete, and he said, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you." And I'm running for my life. Of course I want to. I want to live in this dream. So I'm running, and I remember that it was raining, it was cold, and I'm running through the jungles of Puerto Rico. It was getting darker very quickly, and all of a sudden I ran up this hill, and I could not hear my father anymore. And I ran up this hill, and then all of a sudden I remembered it was dark now in the dream, and I remember I saw a clearing, and around it was trees, and I saw a mist like fog, and I was like, okay, I need to get to the other side because my father's probably behind me and he's going to chop me up. So I need to get to the other side. So I started running through this foggy mist. And all of a sudden, the more I ran, the heavier I got. My footsteps got heavier. And all of a sudden, I realized I couldn't lift my feet. I couldn't pick up my feet. And I started sinking. And I remembered in my dream, my heart started racing, and I was breathing very heavily. And I remembered, I said, God, please, God, don't let me die like this. Don't let me meet my end this way. And I just kept going deeper and deeper. It was like I was being swallowed by quicksand. And then all of a sudden I could see the mist, and I couldn't see nothing around me. I couldn't even see the trees. All I could see was the night sky. It was dark. And I'm going deeper, deeper into it was like quicksand. As I'm getting in and I'm reaching and I'm calling out for God, I said, Dios, God, por favor, God, please send me an angel. Please send me my spirit guides to come to me, please. And all of a sudden when I said that, a hand grabbed me, literally, in the dream, and it pulled me up. And I was standing on firm ground. And what pulled me up, all I could see was the silhouette of a body, but it was light. But it was the figure of a woman, okay? And to this, I know who that woman is, and I'm not going to go too deep into that. But she stood there, and all of a sudden my fear went away. And then all of a sudden, that one silhouette of that one body became another, and then it became another, and then it became another. And then I was surrounded by these figures of light. And try not to get emotional here. I was surrounded by all these figures of light. And then they started just going back into that one figure that stood in front of me. It stopped raining. It was a beautiful night now. The fog, the mist had gone away, and that figure stood in front of me. And then that figure started walking away from me. And of course, I started following it. So I started following it, and then it led me to this dark area, and it pulled its hand in front of me and it said, "Stop. This is where you cannot follow me no more." And I begged it. I said, "Please don't leave me alone here. Please don't leave me alone here. I'm alone. I don't know where I'm at." And the figure, I remember, was pointing, and I remember the dream. I was hysterical, like, "Please don't leave me here. Please don't leave me in this place. I'm alone. I can't make it without you." And the spirit kept pointing. And I decided to look at where that spirit was pointing. And then there I saw my grandmother's house. My grandmother was an espiritista, and when I was little, she was the one. Every summer I would go to Puerto Rico, and she helped me develop my spiritual gifts. And I remembered feeling this calmness, this happiness, this joy in the dream. And then the spirit disappeared, and I walked towards my grandmother's house, who by this time, I was in my 20s. She had passed away when I was 13, but I can feel the light of her house. I can hear her voice. I can hear my grandfather. I can hear some of my uncles, and I was going towards happiness. And I remembered waking up that day. I'll never forget this. And I remembered having a spiritual epiphany. Maybe I'm saying the wrong word, where I got rid of everything that was spiritual, everything that was religious to me, everything that all this earth trappings and trophies that I, delegate or give to my spirits. I had thrown all that away, but my spirits were not in that. My spirits were always inside of me, and they were waiting for me. They were waiting for me. They let me go through these trials and tribulations that I needed to go through, because I needed to go through them. But they were always there. They were always there. And now that I'm much older, I realized that I had to go through that time. I had to, because it made me the man that I am today, to be able to, when someone is sitting in front of me and I'm consulting a person, or I'm giving a person a consultation or helping a person, if a person sits there and says, "Well, you don't know what I've been through, or you don't know my plight," I've been through it all. I've been through it all, and I've made it through. I'm still alive because of my spirits. Just because I turned my back on my spirit guides, they never turned their backs on me. So just wanted to share that. Just because I turned my back on them, they never turned their back on me. And they were there when I needed them the most. And it was that dream that changed my life, and it brought me back. So the last story that I'm going to share with you, I'm going to title it El Hijo Pródigo, or the Prodigal Son. And it has to do with my father, Eddie Azuquita. Today is his 10th anniversary that my father made the crossing from the world of the living into the world of the dead, the world de los ancestros, de los seres, de los muertos. My father was not a bad man. My father was a hardworking man. Him and my mother were very hardworking parents. They raised us, they gave us everything material. My father worked his butt to give us. He wanted that American life with the house with a white picket fence. Every summer we had our family vacations. He would buy my tickets to go to Puerto Rico when I needed to go to Puerto Rico. He was not a bad man. What my father was, though, was he was not a loving man. He was a very stern man. And me and him, I think we started losing our connection as father and son when I reached around 13, where there was no communication between me and my father. None whatsoever. And so it just drifted. We drifted and we drifted and we drifted. And during the time when I was very young, any communication that we had, it was very hard. We just didn't get along. It was like water and vinegar. Is it water? I'm sorry, vinegar and oil. We just didn't mix. 10 years ago, my father was in ICU. He was passing away. My father was a good man. He had one bad habit, which was he loved to drink. He loved to drink a lot. And so I don't want to go too deep into that, but he was in ICU. And I remembered I had received a phone call from my brother, and my brother said, Papi's in ICU, you know. And I said, all right, let me go. This is my dad. This is my father. Let me go. I am his eldest son. Let me go to my father. Even though me and my father were not close, he was my dad. He was my papi. So I remember that I had gone to the ICU in the hospital, and I was there. My brother was there. My sister was there. Other family members were there. And I remembered one of the doctors asked who was the oldest son. And of course, I'm the oldest son. And he pulled me aside and he said, listen, your father's not going to make it. We have to turn off the machine, but you have to be the one who gives us permission to turn off the machine. And I said, I cannot. You cannot put that responsibility on top of me. You cannot put that responsibility on top of me. You know, that's my father. I said, please, my mom is coming from Puerto Rico. She'll be here tomorrow. You know, even though they're not together, they are married. She has to make that decision. And my mother was on her way from Puerto Rico. She was going to be there the following morning. And so the doctor said, your father is suffering. And of course, you don't want to be the one to shut off that machine on your dad. You know, whether you got along with him, whether whatever, no matter, at the end of the day, that is your dad. That's your father. This is the way I saw it. So I remember my family, it had gotten late, and then the doctors and everyone's like, okay, listen, your father needs to rest, and it's time that everyone leaves, but only one can stay with him. And of course, me being the oldest son, I stayed with him. But I remembered I accompanied all my family to their cars. I went downstairs. I accompanied all my family downstairs, and we said our goodbyes. And then I went upstairs back to the room where he was in ICU. And ICU is usually locked, and you have to either press a code, or I don't remember, it's been 10 years, but you press a button and you say to the nurse, listen, I'm so-and-so, and they let you in. So I remember that when I got into ICU, for some reason I didn't press the button, and I went and I touched the door, and the door opened. And I remembered, my dad. I can't even relate the story. The message is my dad. So I ran to my father's room. And I remember when I got to my father's room, I saw my father there, this once proud, beautiful, strong Indian man, Indio Puertorriqueño, baseball player, boxer, fisherman, what I wanted to be as a man. That was my father. Except he wasn't good with the loving part. And there was three nurses. It looked like, what I can remember, there was two women and one man, and they had their head bowed, and they were by the side of my father's bed. And when I walked in, they looked at me and they walked out, and they let me be alone with my dad. And I remembered looking at my dad, and I remembered seeing him sink, like his body was physically sinking into the bed. And I looked around, and I remember there was a vase of flowers. Literally, it was a vase of flowers. And it's like this, and I took the flowers out of the vase, and I put it under the bed. Like, I took the vase of water, and I put it under the bed. And I went to the side of my father's bed, and I held his hand. And I said, Papi, it's me, Luisito. It's me, Luis. Papi, I love you. Te quiero mucho. I'm here for you. You are my father. No matter what, I need you to understand. I'm here for you. Yo te quiero mucho. And I remember him squeezing my hand. And all of a sudden, as he was squeezing my hand, now this, of course, could have been the machines. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I remembered seeing like this light by his bed. It was shining on it was like coming towards him, and then he passed. And then all of a sudden, my brother, I don't know how they got the information my father was passing, and maybe the hospital called them. My brother came in, my sister came in, my cousins came in, and they all came. And I looked up, and I was still holding my father's hand, and he had made the passage. The water was under the bed. And I said my piece with my father. I made my peace with my father. And I remembered leaving the room. They were all there. They were all crying. And I just remembered leaving. And I had a psychic at the time. And I remembered calling my mom. And I said, Mommy, Papi passed away. And she started crying. And she said, who was there with him? And I said, I was there with him. And she goes, well, at least you were there. El hijo de his son, you know, your dad did love you. He didn't show it, but he did love you very much. And at least you were there for him when he needed you the most. And so the moral of this story is that we need to learn to forgive, because sometimes it gets so late, you know, and I wish I had known him in my later years. I wish I had known him better as a man, but I was there for him when he needed me the most. And I didn't want him to become an earthbound spirit, or a spirit that got trapped within the veil where he could not move on, where he would feel that his sons didn't love him or forgave him. I needed him to know that I forgave him. And the reason why I placed the water, it was a vase, because I wanted to make, in Hispanic or in Espiritismo culture, which when someone is passing away, we place water, a glass of water, under or beside the bed, so it makes the journey into that world as peaceful, as a peaceful transition as humanly possible. So this is my last video. This is my last story for tonight. I know I wasn't going to say this. They were supposed to be long, and it was just on the memory of my dad's anniversary that he passed, and he's on my mind. And yo te quiero mucho, papi, tu hijo, Azuquita, te quiero mucho, Luisito. So to end the video, and I'm sorry, I meant to make it as long as it is, I want to break down the word media unidad. A lot of people ask me, what's the difference between media unidad and mediumnidad? Media unidad, which a lot of people have translated into English meaning half unity. Actually, the word media unidad is a corruption. Media, half, unidad, unity, is a corruption of the word mediumnidad, which means a medium. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between una media unidad and a mediumnidad, which again is media unidad is a corruption of mediumnidad, a medium, a spiritual medium. One. And to end the video, it was real quick. I remember that I had gone to a session where a person had said that one of their spirit guides lived in one of these, we call these fuentes, these goblets of water, we call them fuentes. And one of the mediums was saying that their spirit lived in the fuente. Now, I wasn't going to sit there and argue with the person. You can believe whatever you want. The water for us becomes a vessel where it's like a doorway, where the spirit enter through the fluidos, through the currents of the water. And that's why we place them in our altars. There's different forms of fuentes. There are certain fuentes that we use just to honor our spirit guides. And then there's fuentes that we use to cleanse. And then there's other fuentes that we use to trabajar causas, to work lower level spirits, so we can place that lower level spirit into the water so it can go where it needs to go. But spirits cannot live in a fuente. That would be like saying a house. I live in my door, okay? I don't live in my door. The door is the entranceway or the exit for me to come in and out of my house. Los fuentes is a way, it's like a doorway where the spirits can come in and out. They come through the fluidos or the corrientes of the water, okay? So spirits do not generally necessarily, especially if they're high level, this spirit, they're not going to live in water or in a glass, okay? So I just wanted to state that when we use fuentes to work la causa, to work lower level spirits, and the spirit says why it's here, why it's causing the problem, blah, blah, blah. We make sure that when we're cleansing the medium, or we're cleansing the person, or we're lifting that causa goes into the water, and then we get rid of the water. Okay, so just want to end this video. This is Sancista Brujo Luis. Sorry, I wanted to make the video short. I didn't think it was going to get as personal as it did, but much respects, much love. Lo quiero mucho. And if you want to see more videos like this, let me know. Sancista Brujo.